Shabbat Shalom. There are some passages in the Torah that are almost too unbearable to read. Some verses that feel so distant from our modern sensibilities, it's hard to even consider them part of our tradition. Today we encounter one of those texts with the rape of Dina. We may want to look away, but our tradition calls us back and compels us to engage and to grapple with the words on the page. Why? Studies show that 1 in every 6 women has been the victim of an attempted or completed rape in their lifetime. 1 in 6. And a shocking 1 in 16 women say they were raped by force or coercion the first time they had sexual intercourse. The numbers are staggering, and yet the cultural impact less so. Perhaps it is because only a fraction of these assaults are actually reported, and of those, only a fraction of the perpetrators are brought to justice. Sexual assault is a crime that is buried under fear, under threat, under shame, and under silence. And as a society, especially as a Jewish community, we must do better to listen to that silence, to hear the words unspoken in the darkness. It's not easy to hear the words of Dina calling out from our Torah. As the 7th child and the only daughter of Leah and Jacob, and as a victim of sexual assault, Dina's voice has been muted over space and time. In fact, when we look at the story of Dina in this week's portion, Vayishlach, silence pervades the breadth of her narrative. No words are assigned to this young woman. No utterances leave her mouth. Even Dina's birth is marked by silence. When she arrives, there is no flourish or fanfare. No one announces this pregnancy as was done with her brothers, nor are there any elaborate explanations given when her name is revealed. The text simply relays, she bore him a daughter and named her Dina. Dina almost seems superfluous, an unexceptional girl arriving after a succession of robust and promising boys. As Dina grows, she fades more and more into the background, unnoticed, unheard, and later even forgotten. For example, as her father Jacob prepares to meet his brother Esau, he sends his wives and children across the Jabbok River. We read, he sent his 2 wives, his 2 maidservants, and his 11 children across the ford of the Jabbok. But Jacob has 12 children, 11 sons and 1 daughter. Why would the text only say 11? Here, tradition almost universally assumes that Dina is absent from that tally, the assumption being she is not valued enough to be counted. She is not worthy enough to be included. Consequently, when the story does include Dina, she is there on the page, but not necessarily present. She is visible, but hardly noticeable. Dina doesn't speak, so others speak for her. She doesn't act, so others act upon her. She is an exceedingly passive presence in our text, most hauntingly at the scene of her sexual assault, when we read that Shechem, son of Hamor, saw her, took her, and lay with her by force. He saw her, he took her, and he compelled her forcibly to have sexual relations with him. The story continues, being strongly drawn to Dina and in love with the maiden, he spoke to the maiden tenderly. So Shechem said to his father, "Get me this girl as a wife." But where is Dina in this rapid-fire action sequence? What happens to Dina in the aftermath of this Shechem seeing her, taking her, and forcing himself upon her? How does Dina feel when Shechem proclaims his desire to make her his wife? Is she crying in a bathroom? Is she locked in her bedroom? Is she aimlessly wandering around town? What about her perspective, her feelings, her reactions to this life-altering moment? How are we to interpret this scene, this crime, this defilement, without hearing from Dina, without knowing how she felt about Shechem and what he did to her? Our commentators have pored over this scene, often with interpretations that to our eyes feel grossly unjust and often misogynistic. In particular, they seize on the verse immediately preceding the rape, the verse which states, Dina went out to visit the daughters of the land. Though Dina has almost no agency in this entire narrative, this particular verse is the only instance in which she demonstrates some measure of autonomy. Our commentators want to know, what did Dina do when she went out? Who did she see? Why did she leave the comfort of her camp to explore the unknown camps beyond? Was she lonely? Well, yes, say some of our commentators. She had no female contemporaries, no companions. Was she curious about her non-Israelite neighbors? Well, certainly, say some of our commentators. The women played music to entice Dina. Or was it that Dina was promiscuous? Indeed, some of our commentators who considered her mother, Leah, promiscuous, simply say, like mother, like daughter. With these cutting words, they paint a very ugly picture of Dina. Dina, they imply, invited this assault. She encouraged it. These glosses are classic examples of victim shaming and victim blaming, a tactic sadly as commonplace today as they were ages ago. Just yesterday, the New York Times published a story about 21-year-old Lu Jinggao's claim that she was raped by one of the most powerful and rich men in China. The responses to her allegations have been unfathomably cruel. According to the article, after her name became common knowledge on the Chinese internet, Miss Lu was widely called a liar, a gold digger, and other slurs I will not mention from this bima. The article continues, it may be difficult for Westerners to grasp the scale and intensity of her online shaming. One wonders why so much vitriol and savagery would be unleashed on a woman who has potentially been victimized in the most intimate of ways. One wonders why this woman has become the object of an almost inexplicably abusive public shaming campaign. Oh, Dina's story is not a tale of bygone days. It is no relic. Her predicament is not merely a predicament of its time or of its biblical context. Her predicament, rather, is timeless, lived out again and again, generation after generation, by countless women who have been shamed and silenced as a result of sexual violence. Take, for example, Chanel Miller, who for many years was known only as Emily Doe. During the twilight hours of January 18, 2015, Chanel was sexually assaulted on the Stanford University campus. She was found on a patch of dirt and pine needles behind a dumpster, unresponsive and nearly naked. Her attacker had violated her while she was unconscious, an unfathomably brutal assault on a virtually lifeless body. When two grad students bravely intervened, Chanel, covered in blood and soil, was transported by ambulance to the hospital, where she would wake up to a new reality, a life forever altered. Of the harrowing and confusing days that followed, Chanel writes, I didn't talk, I didn't eat, I didn't sleep, I didn't interact with anyone, and I became isolated from the ones I loved most. She continues, I felt too empty to continue to speak. She was, in her own words, hollowed out. She was gutted. I had my own dreams and enjoyments and goals before the assault happened. Now I felt like nothing more than a body. I was spoken about in a very physical way, but I didn't feel human. From the moment Chanel was assaulted, her worth was impugned, challenged, cheapened. Throughout the trial, she was often referred to as the unconscious, intoxicated woman, stripped of her name, her dignity, her identity. She adds, "For a while, I believed that was all I was. I had to force myself to relearn my real name, my identity, to relearn that this is not all that I am, that I am not just a drunk victim at a frat party found behind a dumpster. I am a human being who has been irreversibly hurt." My life was put on hold for over a year, waiting to figure out if I was worth something. One wonders if Dina asked herself the very same questions about her own self-worth, about her intrinsic value, about her identity and potential. One wonders what Dina would say if given the chance. But Dina is virtually blotted out from our tradition, mentioned but once more in our Torah, her name buried in a long list of Jacob's descendants. And in a genuinely heartbreaking commentary on Dina's life, our Midrash imagines a heretofore silent Dina offering these words, "Where will I carry my shame?" These are the only words, imagined or otherwise, assigned to Dina, the only words our tradition could think to implant within her. They serve as a stark reminder of how our tradition has viewed Dina over the years as a woman disgraced. In Chanel Miller's victim statement, she reflected on the damage she had incurred in the aftermath of the assault. "My damage was internal, unseen. I carry it with me. You took away my worth, my privacy, my energy, my time, my safety, my intimacy, my confidence, my own voice, until today." In that moment, Chanel found her strength. She found the will to proclaim her self-worth and the resolve to let go of her shame. "The barricades that held us down will not work anymore," Chanel later wrote. "And when silence and shame are gone, there will be nothing to stop us. We will not stand by as our mouths are covered, bodies entered. We will speak, we will speak, we will speak." Even as Dina remains silent in our Torah, may we use this Shabbat to give voice to her suffering, to lift up her story, and honor her painful legacy. In so doing, may we empower every Dina who lives in fear today to know their worth, to find the help they need, to raise their voices, and to speak, and to speak, and to speak. For surely we will listen. Kenny Hiratzon. Shabbat Shalom.